Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 258, Becoming an Introvert Changemaker. As many of you know, I consider myself a changemaker, partly because my MSc is in change agent skills and strategies. But it's so much more than a qualification, so let me explain. I firmly believe that we all have the ability to be a change maker, and it's true to say that some of you already are. Like me, you are changing your world for the better and changing the world for those you interact with. You are the advocates for those treated unjustly and the allies for those who need a sounding board or have yet to find their voice. I see you and I hear you. And yet, we need more of us to be in that mindset, because being a change maker is an intention and a mindset more than it ever was a qualification. So in this episode, I'll be exploring what I mean by a change maker, why we need more of we introverts to step into this role, and most importantly, how we fulfill that role in ways that work for us while still having the desired impact. Let me start by sharing my understanding of the role of a change maker. For me, it's anyone who can imagine a different reality to the one we're experiencing, one that benefits others more. But it doesn't end there, for typically they are just the dreamers. The real change makers are the ones who take action to bring that new reality, their vision, into being. They are the ones who take the risks, the tall poppies who stand up for what they believe. Change makers are the initiators who believe so strongly in the new reality that they articulate their vision clearly and in a compelling way, which inspires others to follow them. So they are the ones boldly going where maybe no one has gone before, and they will keep at it even when the going is challenging. This is not a role for the faint-hearted, the flitters or the butterflies who dip their noses in and move on. This is a role that requires passion, commitment and stick-to-itiveness. And when you hear me talking about changing the world, don't be put off by that. Let's not mistake it as meaning that you have to make monumental changes in order to be a change maker. Effective change makers also use a marginal gain approach where they make things better by small degrees. And they keep at it. Before we know where we are, those small changes have created a significant difference. I've talked about this many times before on previous episodes. We often look to the outspoken, the domineering leaders and the outwardly brave to do this work for us, thinking, who am I? Who am I to put my head above the parapet, for example? Actually, who are you to sit back and wait for others to make the first move? We all know the challenges that we introverts face in this world, geared up as it is for the extrovert ideal. But let me remind you that we have witnessed just how successful introverted leaders have been throughout history. So why do we and others hang on desperately to the belief that leadership and change-making is not for we quieter ones? It really is time for change, my guild of courageous introverts. It almost goes without saying that there are ways in which we need to make ourselves ready for the journey ahead, because it is indeed a journey and so much more than a task. We need to have a certain level of emotional intelligence that provides us with relevant self-awareness. We need to have developed sufficient resilience so we don't skulk away licking our wounds at the first difficulty. And of course, we need to have unshakable belief in that new reality that we are advocating for. Sound daunting? Yep. But for those who believe in their vision of a new reality, this doesn't scare them off. And neither should it scare you off either. Remember the enduring factors of a fulfilled life? They include pursuing projects that matter as you lead a true life being your unique self. That, in essence, is being a change maker. So let's be realistic about the challenge we face, though, many of which I've already alluded to. The world, it seems, is biased in favour of the extrovert ideal, and yet few individuals, managers or organisations will admit to that, preferring instead to collude like obedient sheep with the existing narrative of what constitutes success. So we need to play to our strengths as introverts and show rather than tell. We need to demonstrate our leadership capability rather than simply being able to articulate how we can make a difference. Although make no mistake, that's important too. I take every opportunity in these episodes to talk about our strengths, and I offered a lot of clarity on this particular topic on our strengths in episode 250. There are a few that I'm going to remind us of here as they're particularly relevant to change-making. We know that speaking up, especially in large or important gatherings, is not something all of us volunteer for. Yet when we see or feel injustice, when we witness how practices and processes are discriminating against people, when we finally get mad enough, as I did, we are more than capable of speaking passionately and persuasively, but rarely off the cuff. I need to be sure of what I want to say and will have structured my message clearly. And that is one of our gifts, as when we do open up, when we do speak with that passion, people tend to listen. We just need the self-belief and skill set to make the most of those opportunities. When we speak, the depth of thought we have given the issue and the extent of our problem solving is unmistakable. It's part of what makes our message so powerful, and we're highly unlikely to be just spitballing. I've never liked that term or the process it conjures up, but I'm sure you get my drift. Our ability to hold the space for others to speak without being interrupted and listen to understand the diverse perspective sets us apart. And in a good way, as most other people are just listening to respond, so it becomes two monologues missing each other. And we should not overlook our ability to build meaningful, trusting and authentic relationships that are fit for purpose. I still maintain relationships are for a reason, a season or a lifetime, so we need to be clear of the purpose without becoming manipulative or self-serving. Real productive relationships are reciprocal. One of the important reasons to maintain focus and commitment on your vision is that it strengthens your resilience. This is also a topic I've both covered in depth and touched on frequently, as wholesome resilience, my unique approach to the topic, is essential for our well-being. And yet we know that some leaders and managers have weaponized this concept and will accuse people of lacking resilience if they dare to push back or show emotion. Unlike elastic bands, when we are stretched to near breaking point, we don't return exactly the same. We have learned or gathered experiences that exist somewhere on the continuum from trauma to transformation. So we're different, and it's resilience that enables us to focus our energies on what we can control or influence as we encounter obstacles. So we need to be prepared for the pushback rather than caught off guard, as this enables us to keep our feet on the ground throughout our mission. We need to be realistic in our intentions so we don't hit burnout, and we need a clear line of sight between our vision and our values. Now, I've shared a lot already, but I'm minded that it'll probably be helpful to distill all of this goodness into actionable strategies. So here goes. I've got just 3 for simplicity. Number 1, prepare to face into the bias. We know we're going to encounter the bias towards the extrovert ideal regardless of the nature of the vision you hold, so plan your responses in advance. If you can confidently address it, call it out, and even put it on the table before it arises, you have more control. Practice self-advocacy to showcase your value in a team or project. It's better to be the tall poppy than to hide your light under a bushel in these situations. Refuse to be an accomplice in perpetuating the misrepresentation of introverts in the workplace and society. And if all this feels a bit too challenging right now, remember you can take the self-paced Flip Your Limiting Beliefs course so you build your confidence through empowering or liberating beliefs that are grounded in reality. Number 2, leverage quiet influence. As mentioned, we have quite the advantage in that we're not the most vocal, so when we speak, people tend to listen. Either use your written skills to good effect or speak up in one-on-one conversations or small group settings so you are sharing your ideas effectively. Build your ability to influence through consistency, credibility, and high-quality contributions rather than thinking it's about showmanship. I believe there is room for many of us to turn up the sass and start to show some attitude. I mean this in the most positive sense, but as people often mistake us for pushovers, let's push back and show our mettle. To be sassy as an introvert is about being confident, not arrogant. Being an advocate, not blindly compliant. Being intentional, not invisible. This is how we bust the myths and correct the misconception of what being an introvert means. There are a couple of ways that you can continue to engage regularly with these types of messages. One is by signing up for my weekly reflections emails, and another is by joining the newly formed Introverts Roundtable group on LinkedIn. It's very deliberately a round table because every voice matters. Number 3, create your own resilience framework. To ensure that you don't slide from overwhelm right through to burnout, develop sustainable and effective routines for self-care and recharging so that you have access to the right kind of energy when you need it for your change-making activities. Consciously build your support network so that you have allies in your corner for all areas of your life, and mentors who both understand and respect your working style whilst challenging you to grow and develop. Remember that there are at least 4 types of resilience, so make sure you have strategies for each. This is something we focus on in detail in the Frustrated to Flourishing program. For ambitious introverts who understand that their change-making has to start with themselves, they know they need to have that wholesome resilience to be able to navigate the peaks and valleys of a flourishing life. So in conclusion, changemakers are action takers because they see the bigger picture, have a clear vision of what needs to be different, and are not prepared to sit back and wait. They know it can be a challenging road ahead, but are prepared for and supported on their journey. We introverts have so many strengths, gifts, and natural talents that this troubled world needs right now, that many more of us are heeding the call from within. It's becoming impossible to ignore for some, including me. Knowing what works for us and being wise enough to initiate and support the change authentically is what really matters. The quiet power, reasoned influence and calm delivery of our introvert voices is more compelling than you probably realise. Let's provide a meaningful alternative to the overly dramatic, stress-inducing and manipulative style of the current narrative. Our style of change-making is altogether different. if you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.